The host over at Fox and Friends just called for more regulation.
I knew nothing about these derailment numbers. I'm stunned by it. That we have thousands of derailments all the time, and how costly it is, and how they're not kept up, and maybe the regulation needs to be there. I think there needs to be, there's a widespread sentiment to have a look at the whole rail industry, what the lobbyists are doing, and what the actual, I heard there were 3 people on that train of how many cars? 20 of which had chemicals in it?
Somebody at the front, somebody at the back, and
does that
some
blow
other
you away? I mean, I know nothing about the business. I'm more than transparent about that. But I just think we got to look at this. And as Governor DeWine said, I had no idea this toxic chemicals were coming through these towns. Well, at least we should be alerted to it. I think that's a reasonable request.
Well, and Pete Buttigieg even said we have thousands of these train derailments quite often, and that is alarming. This could happen to your town.
Yeah, listen, we mentioned when I was a reporter back in the day, I used to go to train derailments in Kansas all the time. They oftentimes just were carting wheat to market and not poisonous chemicals, but they can also update, the systems, how the trains stop, how the trains go. All that stuff could be updated.
Huh. Wow. Calling for regulation. Weird. It's almost like they just figured out that regulations are rules there to prevent bad things like this from happening. Weird. I know, shocker, right? But apparently nobody at Fox News seemed to have understood regulations before this train derailment. No, look, obviously these people are pretending to be surprised and going, I got regulations. Gee, I guess we ought to regulate. Yes. In fact, maybe the Trump administration shouldn't have deregulated in the first place, and then we wouldn't have had this issue. These trains would have had ECS brakes. They would have not had their Civil War era technology still there, and like minimal crews. But look, of course, Fox News is probably the worst people to actually be delivering the correct message. Yes, we do need more regulation. Pete Buttigieg is, he should be regulating the industry right now instead of not regulating. And in this case, there was also a new rule that they were crafting that actually would have deregulated the industry just a little bit further. Hopefully that has been put on hold. But look, these guys, these ghouls on Fox and Republicans in the administration, in the Trump administration, and in Congress, remember what they've been pushing all along, which is deregulation. When they say small government, that's what they mean. Small government for whom? For corporations and the rich. So you don't have to pay more in taxes. So they can actually make more profit even when their trains are derailing in your backyard. Look, corporations like Norfolk Southern, they're worth about $53 billion now. They're a $1 billion company. And what did they do? They bought back their own stocks. And then, of course, gave out massive bonuses to executives, dividends to their shareholders. And that's after, by the way, cutting their workforces to an absurd minimum. They used to have over 1 million workers. Now they have somewhere less than 200,000. Norfolk Southern also made $4.8 billion in operating profit in 2022. More Perfect Union had reported this, and they've been doing excellent reporting, excellent work on this, along with the lever. Now, they also, Norfolk Southern, had paid shareholders $4.7 billion in stock buybacks and dividends. You think that they would be able to invest in, more crew members. But they didn't. As Timothy Noah wrote in a New Republic, the 141 car train that crashed in East Palestine carried only 2 crew members and 1 trainee. Now, new report also come out that one of the reasons, and this is the NTSB report, the train had crashed as a result of, faulty equipment, of course, right? So let me find that real quick. So now what happened is that an overheated wheel bearing may have caused the derailment. So that, again, that's according to the NTSB report. So now the thing is, you should have crew members to be able to monitor this, right? Well, they only had 3 crew members. Now, one of the axles was reported to have been on fire just 20 miles of where the derailment had happened. Did these workers, did they know that this was on fire? I don't know. It is very possible. But it also, they could have known and could have been told, don't worry about it. Why do I say that? Well, it turns out Norfolk Southern allows a monitoring team to instruct crews, this is according to a ProPublica report, to ignore alerts from train track sensors designed to flag potential mechanical problems. You know, like the axle being on fire. Hey, it turns out deregulation, not a good idea. Allowing companies to come up with their own policies that allow you to ignore massive safety problems. Because, again, according to rules, you are supposed to take stop the train, take the car out when it starts to overheat. But they didn't, they weren't able to do that because they didn't have the ECS braking. So they couldn't slow down fast enough. Ironic choice of, or ironic phrase there. And probably didn't notice or was told, don't worry about it. We got to keep our trains on time. Now, they do have sensors. And that's the most damning thing about this report, right? So now, according to the NTSB report, there are sensors there on the tracks. Norfolk Southern had added them to measure the temperatures of bearings that could determine whether overheating could pose a derailment risk. Now, Train 32N, which Norfolk Southern workers say they knew was unsafe, passed 3 hot bearing detector systems designed to detect overheating and provide audible real-time warnings to crews before it derailed, the NTSB report says. At milepost 79.9, the suspect bearing from car 23 was 38 degrees above ambient temperature. It's in Fahrenheit. At milepost 6901, it was 103. At milepost 49.81, it was 253. So they're supposed to stop and inspect this. They did not. NS crews are supposed to stop and inspect potential problems when alerts indicate that there's a difference between bearings at the same axle greater than or equal to 115 degrees Fahrenheit, or there is a bearing between 170 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Publication notes, if the recorded temperature is greater than 200, the instruction is to set out the rail car. In this case, the HPD system at milepost 49.81 transmitted a critical audible alarm message instructing the crew to slow down and stop the train to inspect a hot axle. The engineer increased the dynamic brake application to further slow and stop the train. During the deceleration, an automatic emergency brake application initiated and train 32N came to a stop. After the train stopped, they noticed the fire and smoke and notified the dispatcher of a possible derailment. With dispatcher authorization, the crew applied handbrakes to the 2 rail cars that had the train, uncoupled the head and locomotives, and moved the locomotives about a mile from the uncoupled rail cars. And then, of course, it moved on. So, yeah, that was a problem. And again, we're talking about a crew of 3 people that are having to deal with all that. Bit of an issue. So this is a problem with deregulation and self-regulation of corporations. And once again, something that Fox News, conservative media, the right wing, conservative politicians continue to push over and over again. Oh, too much regulation, we're over-regulated. This doesn't look like over-regulation to me. It looks like under-regulation. Now, that said, getting back to Fox News. I actually didn't expect them to bring up the fact that the Trump administration had deregulated, and yet, well, here they are.
Speaking of the White House,
luck with that.
apparently regulations regarding train safety were changed during the Trump administration. This particular railroad and others lobbied President Trump to dismantle an Obama-era rule that would have required railroads to update their braking systems. And apparently the Obama administration had pushed for it to govern transportation of hazardous materials after about 500,000 barrels of crude were dumped. But ultimately, the Trump administration undid that and said the costs exceeded the benefits.
Rare moment of clarity on Fox News. Actually admitting that, oh yeah, the Obama administration did the right thing, and then the Trump administration undid that. Now, I wish they would have gone into, and of course, I'm asking for too much because it's Fox News. Okay, you mentioned the lobbying. Who did the money go to? I mean, yeah, you said the Trump administration was lobbied. How much money? Did you mention the stock buybacks? No, he didn't. So that's the issue, right? Yes, they are correct, but like most corporate media, or I should say all corporate media, they really get into, you know, the real reasons here, the monies. The reason that they deregulate is so that they can make more money and so that they can do stock buybacks. They can reward shareholders with dividends, reward executives with executive bonuses, compensation. They don't mention any of that stuff because the real root here is greed. The real issue is companies putting their bottom line, their profits, over the lives of average people. Nonetheless, Fox News, interestingly, putting the blame where it is and actually calling for regulations. Let's hope that the administration, the Biden administration, actually follows through.